We have a new opening to our show. Our show is Main Street. I'm Geoffrey Mark filling in for Gary Allen, who will be back with us at the beginning of November. Hey, are you in the mood to laugh? Are you feeling funny? You got a jiggy? Let me tell you, I've got a very funny friend to share with you the first half hour and a brilliant writer friend and raconteur who could probably fill 5 or 6 hours just with his wonderful stories. So we got a double header today. Our first half hour, we're going to have Peter Fogel, actor, comedian, also raconteur. Second half hour, James Gavin. So let's all say together, feel better, Gary. Okay, we said it, Gary, feel better. Let's have a show without any pause. He is brilliant, funny as hell, a wonderful actor, a wonderful comedian. My buddy, would you please at home snap your fingers for my buddy Peter Fogel?
Hi, what a wonderful introduction.
And there he is. Well, I am in breezy, we're almost having a hurricane, breezy Palm Springs. You are in South Florida, sir. How are things down there?
Very excellent. It's like, well, I always say it's like 90 degrees and sunny with 100% chance of elderly people driving slowly in front of me. That's my life. But that's actually your life in Palm Springs. You have a dry heat. I love your area. It's Palm Springs, Palm Desert, Desert Hot Springs. I always say combine it to one town called Blazing Infernosville. It's just easier because it's all like, right? People burst into flames exiting the car to go into a supermarket. Am I correct? It's like boiling there. Boiling.
I tell you, though, I love it here. I spent a great deal of time in South Florida because my grandparents lived there. I had aunts and uncles and cousins and things.
They have to. It's the law. Go on.
It's the law. I think you reach, what is it 64 or 65 and you're Jewish and you're in New York, you must move to Florida?
I moved at 47, so I've been down here a little while. So
what brought you to, well, we'll talk about the wonderful shows you do in a moment. And folks, we have a buzz. Don't let it bother you. Our camera and microphone just smoked a joint. What brought you down to Florida at such a young age?
At such a young age. I was being harassed by ARP. ARP does this. They groom you. They're like Scientologists. They kept dangling discounts. I said, fine. They actually start at 48. You know that, Geoffrey. They start grooming you at 48, knowing that eventually you're going to turn 50 and be in Florida and go to an early bird dinner at 4 o'clock. So I had moved back from LA in 2001, right in time for 9/11. No coincidence. I stayed in New York for 5 years. I was thinking, you know what? The housing market's going crazy. I'm going to move to, now don't laugh, I was going to move to Scranton, PA. I don't know why, but I had two friends of mine, lady friends of mine. Peter, you can be a big shot here. Then my buddy, Bruce Smirnoff, had moved to Florida. He also moved to LA, from LA back to New York. He said to me, you are one burst pipe in the middle of the winter in Pennsylvania than killing yourself. I go, you're right. I go, are you prepared for a $400 heating bill in Pennsylvania in the winter? No, I'm not. And then I moved to Florida. All relatives were down here anyway. And I realized all of New Yorkers, like you said, Geoffrey, they all moved down to Florida anyway eventually. There's no reason to be in New York except to enjoy Broadway shows, restaurants, and to pad your American Express bill so you can have more miles after what you build yourself in New York. But they're all down here anyway. And there were condos and senior communities. Did I tell you the story that I was offered? I perform at independent and assisted to help out and give back to the community. I was actually offered work at a hospice as a comedian. Did I tell you that story?
No, please tell me.
And just to let you know, Hospice of the Comfort in Orlando called me up to perform. Now my mind is racing. I'm a whore. I'll perform most likely any place if the check clears. And I'm thinking, hospice? Do they really need a comedian? How about a priest or a rabbi? What am I going to stand at the foot of the bed and tap the microphone? Where you from? ICU? True, hand to God, this is a true story. The woman says, no, we're not here to have you perform comedy in front of our clients. We're here. It's for our Christmas party for our staff. And I said, oh, okay. And I told that story to about 300 members of the staff at Comfort of Hospice of the Comforter in Orlando, and they laughed. But it was a true story. I'm thinking, I'll go anywhere if the check clears most of the time, but never a hospice. But that was a true story. I actually thought they wanted me to perform Mrs. Ginsburg, who's on her last lap around the sun, but no, it was for the staff, and they did laugh at that story, by the way. So,
as well they should. For our friends and fans who don't know your whole story, can you give me the short version of how you got started in comedy?
At 10 years old, I grew up in a dysfunctional. At 10 years old, Geoffrey, I've told you this, I think. I came from it was dysfunction junction family. I said, I have to get away from these people. That was my family. Very dysfunction. I had a very narcissist father who verbally abused his children, his wife. I can't go into it. So I had no choice either to drink heavily or enter comedy.
I did both.
You did both. And
yes.
That's Geoffrey Mark, the man who knows everyone in Hollywood. Geoffrey Mark is the Z-League of Woody Allen's movie. Am I right? You know everyone. If I have to get a connection, I call Geoffrey Mark. So I just, I went to college, and got an acting degree from Bachelor of Fine Arts. And by the way, I went to college with some very famous people, by the way, who went to my acting school. Did you know that? Lisa, what's her name? Who won for Melissa Leo, won an Oscar. She went to Purchase. I'm a little older than her. Wesley Snipes went to Purchase. I was a little older than him. But Stanley Tucci, who you know.
Oh, yes.
Great actor.
Great actor.
He was a little younger than me, but we were in the same acting program. And who else? A lot of famous actors actually went to SUNY at Purchase, and I was the 5th graduating class. So I went, and Steven Weber from Wings. I'm sure you know Steven Weber, great actor, wonderful guy. When we run into each other once in a while, we talk about the good times. But he was younger, I was a little older, but I was in the same acting program with Stanley Tucci and Ving Rhames. Oh, and Ving Rhames. I knew Ving Rhames when he was 60 pounds lighter. We used to have lunch together at SUNY at Purchase, or as we called it, SUNY at Poor Choice. That was our acting bachelor, right above Manhattan. It was the Juilliard of Westchester, is what we called it. So I was trained as a professional actor.
By the way, sir, and I mean this sincerely, my Hebrew name is Zelig.
Oh, is it Zelig? Wow.
It really is.
It's like Deja Jew. Is it? But you know what I'm talking about, Zelig, the movie, the Woody Allen movie. I know you do.
Of course.
People watch this one, a really funny film. It was just the guy that was in every photo, right? He was always there. Wasn't that right, Geoffrey? He was.
Yes.
It was. But that's funny, or Zelig. That's funny. What a coinkydink. Okay.
I use Forrest Gump because a lot of people don't know what a Zelig is, but it's the same idea. How could anyone have known that I'd be right there to witness John Lennon's assassination? That kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, did you?
Yeah.
Okay. So you are everywhere. You're everywhere you have to be. It's amazing. That's a skill within itself that you. If I have a question, I ask Geoffrey. You're the encyclopedia of show business.
I thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Let's talk about you. You've done 2 long-running one-man shows, which I find amazing.
Yes. I'm doing, for the last 9 years, I've been the national touring star of a show called My Mother's Italian, My Father's Jewish, and I'm in Therapy, written by Steve Solomon, a very funny, brilliant comedic writer. He licensed it to a producer, so I travel around the country, and by golly, we're going to somehow bring it to Palm Springs one of these days.
Young man, unfortunately, I think there is already somebody ahead of you doing it.
That's probably Steve Solomon. That's why we haven't done it. See, the thing is, we can't go to cities that Steve does it in. If you see it, it's with Steve. That's right. He does it at the McAllen.
Yes.
McAllen. Okay. But there's a good chance my other show that I wrote, that's my show called Till Death Do Us Part, You First, written and starring me, but directed by Academy Award nominee Chaz Palminteri, who created the Bronx Tale franchise, and can now be seen on The Godfather of Harlem on one of those SX channels, one of those weird cable channels, which stars Forrest Whitaker. Chaz discovered me in Florida because he's a friend of a friend, and my friend said, I have a buddy coming to see your show tonight, and he happened to have been in Florida at the time, and so he came to see my show. When I did it locally at a small theater, he was taken by it. He thought, this is hysterical. I said to him, I'm looking for a director to take it to the next level, and he offered his services. So he directed tightened up the show. We compared notes. Being I'm a bachelor, he's a married man, and that's where we are now. And we're waiting to get it up and running again, in which I will be doing in 2022. The show's back like
Yay.
everything else, and I'm doing My Mother's Italian, My Father's Jewish. There's two versions of that show. There's the original show. Then there's another one called My Mother's Italian, My Father's Jewish. The Therapy Continues, a winter show. So we do the holiday version, and I'll be doing the holiday version in the Regent Theater in the beginning of December, December 13th through the 19th at the Regent Theater in outside of Boston, Arlington.
Cool.
And then I'm going to be doing a month's run at the Herberger Theater of My Mother's Italian, My Father's Jewish, The Therapy Continues, the Herberger for a month in Arizona. So I have three versions. I have my show in my head, 90-minute show. I have the original show, My Mother's Italian, My Father's Jewish, and I have the other version, the holiday version of the original in my head, which kind of crowds all the voices in my head to begin with. So it's very crowded. It's a constant party going
You've
on.
got a
in my
full
brain.
plate. When you come to Arizona, drive a little farther, come out here and say hello to me, please.
Well, if you feel like coming, how far are you from Phoenix, by the way?
About 5-hour drive.
Okay. Well, get your chauffeur to take you or fly in. I'll be there for a month.
I'll come see you. I'll come see you. I
Would you?
promise.
I'd love to see you. We'll have dinner. You'll see the show.
I would love
So,
it. I would love it. Compare and contrast for me the difference between doing stand-up where you're doing your own material as Peter and then doing a one-man show where a lot of it is still your own writing, but it's one character and it's a storyline that runs through. Which do you enjoy doing more?
Well, the beauty of it is that I trained as an actor and I trained as a stand-up for 40 years. And I used to do voiceovers and I can do characters and voices. The one-man show is a narrative. It's a story. I'm taking people on a journey and I get to do all the different characters in both shows. In Steve's show, I do his Italian mother and I do his father. So it's very difficult going from a very high Italian woman to an old Jewish man. But that's why I'm hired to do it. I do different voices and characters. And that's the difference. Basically, one is maybe 15 minutes a stay, 40 minutes. The shows are 75 minutes nonstop. And that's the difference. I'm telling a story. I'm not doing stand-up when I do the one-man shows. The stand-up is basically just bits. I string them together. I make people laugh. I sell my merchandise. I leave. And that's what stand-up is about. But one-man show is, I'm a raconteur. I'm telling a story. I'm telling stories within stories of a narration. When I do Till Death Do Us Part, I come out and introduce myself. I tell the audience what my issue is, what my problem is, and they just go on the journey with me. And in Till Death Do Us Part, I'm bringing all my failed romances out in the open, and I'm being very vulnerable. It's a multimedia show, so there's a video, there's graphics, and there's a production value. It's like an off-Broadway show I'm doing on stage.
Very off, but the production
Very
values of a
off-Broadway.
New York show.
Yeah, of a New York show. It's someone says, it's not like stand-up. Show up, turn the microphone on, test the lights. Can you hear me in the back? Yeah, okay, it's good. When I do the solo shows, I go in a day. If I'm performing on a Wednesday, I'm flying in a Monday. I'm doing a load-in with the set on a Tuesday. It's just like an off-Broadway show. You're running tracks, you're doing cues, and that's what people are paying to see. In other words, I bring joy to people that can afford a $65 ticket. That's the difference.
Well, you bring joy to me anyway for free.
Thank you.
Your shows have gotten just brilliant reviews, both for the shows themselves and for your performances. So I'm going to encourage all of our friends and fans out there, anywhere you see Peter Fogel performing, get in your car and go see him, because as we say in Yarmy's Army, which is a group of comedians and comedy writers, he's a funny motherfucker.
Funny motherfucker. Wow.
How, sir, how can you be a middle-aged, handsome Jewish boy in South Florida and be single?
Fast on my feet. It's interesting. I mean, I'm but that's a long story. And I talk about like if I'm dating a woman and I'm how do I say this? It's everybody's very busy with their lives in COVID, and it's like someone says, "Are you dating anyone?" Well, I'm doing some internet dating. I wouldn't say I'm dating. I'm in negotiations to get a phone call I left 2 weeks ago with a woman who gave me her phone number to discuss possibly getting together for a cup of coffee. It's like you're making arrangements just to get someone to like settle down and have a cup of coffee. It's difficult, and it's all, you meet someone that you get along with, laugh, you get there, but there's no love connection, and yet you become friends with them. Then you get someone you have intense chemistry with, but they have wow, this woman is hot, she's laughing at all my jokes, but I believe she has borderline personality disorder. It's like you can't have it all in life. And I tell the audiences, I say to them, if you're with your significant other tonight, you have beat the Vegas odds. To find someone you can go through your life journey that doesn't drive you crazy is remarkable. I'm talking that for men and female. But the beauty of doing Till Death Do Us Part, which Chaz really helped me hone in, is when I look at the audience, I swear to you, Geoffrey, and the husband's like smiling and laughing, and the wife's giving him a dirty look and elbowing him, I know I've resonated with couples. That's the beauty of it. My show is really perfect for single, divorced, and devoted couples because I hit all the segments of relationships, as Chaz and I would say, the absurdity of love and what people go through. I mean, you get someone who's so sweet, wonderful, get your humor, understand you, but there's no love connection. It's like Cupid didn't hit us. Then you get the ones, like I said, that have personality disorder, borderline personality disorder. That's what I want. I want someone who's hot and sexy, gets me excited, but is on the spectrum of insanity. That's what I seem to attract. It's like I can't get it all. I can't get it right, and it's difficult. And I may be seeing an ex-girlfriend tonight. I don't know. And I go, what? It's like, why are you doing this? We're creatures of habit, right, Geoffrey? We do this thing over going, we know this is wrong. No good will come of this. And yet we just keep walking down the aisle. But that's the craziness. That's the insanity. And
it amazes me. It amazes me that any two people ever actually get together. The odds of two people getting along for more than 5 minutes romantically,
yeah, I mean,
is incredible.
I'm thinking if they're laughing at everything, we're having a connection. No, she just enjoyed the performance at Duffy's at the sports bar that I bought 2-for-1 drinks, and she's a little buzzed. So I'm thinking we're having a great time. It's all, as we've discussed, everything in life is luck, whether it's good or bad. As you know, it's just the luck of the draw. I mean, you can get somebody that you really connect with. I mean, I meet women that either have autoimmune system disorder, fibromyalgia, and then one woman said to me right off the bat, I suffer from clinical depression. And I'm thinking, she hasn't even gone out with me yet. She suffers from clinical depression. I said, I'm going to take out an ad on the internet. Wanted, loving, nurturing woman whose blood work is in normal range. I'm telling you. It's just, and I feel, and it's like, one woman I went out with, lovely girl, she's got some health issues, and she kept apologizing. I go, you don't have to apologize. You're going through something. Let's just be friends. Let's find out what is physically wrong with you, and for you to get healthy, because that's more important, right, Geoffrey?
Yes,
getting your health together. You don't have to apologize. I felt so bad. Lovely girl. We had, but she's in pain. She's got her health issues, and take care of your health. Love will be there when it's back, but what good are you if you did, what good, you know what I'm saying? Get your health together. You don't have to apologize.
Let me ask you a question, sir.
Yeah.
A serious question. You've been making me laugh for years and years and years, and I've publicly and privately, if you pitched for my team, I'd be looking for dishes right now. I think you're amazing and handsome, smart,
kosher, non-kosher. Which dish?
Whatever you say, sir.
Oh, okay.
It's up to you.
Okay.
Who makes you laugh besides Steve Bluestein?
Bluestein. Who makes me laugh? The late Robin made me laugh.
Yes.
Jackie Mason makes me laugh. May he rest in peace. If you really want a brilliant comedian, I'm sure you know Jackie too. Did you meet Jackie also? There was one Jew you didn't meet.
I didn't know him well, but I met him.
Yes, he who makes me laugh. It's like there's one comic, there's one friend of, like my friend Bruce Smarnoff is a very funny guy.
Yes, he is.
And there's another comic. Well, he's not a comic. He's a chiropractor, but wannabe comic. I'm not going to mention his name, but all he wants is to be a comedian. And for me to torture him, I just say, by the way, Bruce told me to tell you, when he dies and there's a eulogy, you cannot speak because he doesn't want you to have the stage time at his funeral. That's the joke. And that would drive him crazy. You're telling me I can't even speak and do some stand-up at his own? No, he wants you you're not even invited to speak, because that's a lot. When a famous comic dies and they'll line up, they give the eulogy. There's some comics going, I really didn't know, Mel. I'm just here for the stage time. That's a lot of people do. Hi, I'm Peter. Hi, Peter. I'm Peter, and I'm an alcoholic. Not really. I'm just here for the stage time. I think there's a lot of comedians that are in AA. They're just there for the stage time.
May I tell you a funeral story?
Yes.
Quickly. When Pat McCormick was a dear friend, and when Pat died,
let me tell you about Pat McCormick. My buddy would Pat McCormick was brilliant writer.
Yes.
And it was, my friend said he went to visit a friend at the motion picture where he was staying, remember?
Yes.
And he says it was so weird seeing Pat McCormick in his last days with dementia, whatever he had. As you probably know, he was thinner, and it was just weird to see a man who was so quick on his feet and glib, brilliant, just deteriorating. And not to bring down
I saw Pat many times in the motion picture.
Right.
Home
because
we were buddies.
Yeah.
So it's his memorial service, and George Carlin is the host.
Right.
And then they open it up for people who just want to come up and say a few words. And this would be a great story if I could remember this man's name. Shirley Jones's last husband.
Oh, Marty Ingalls.
Marty Ingalls gets up and says,
right?
And says, what a wonderful day. But you know what? I never found Pat McCormick funny. And let me tell you why. And we all laughed because we thought he was doing
shtick
or material. He was serious. He droned on for 15 minutes about how unfunny Pat McCormick is, until Carl Reiner stood up and said, Marty, sit the fuck down and get off that goddamn Carl Reiner is shouting at him at Pat McCormick's memorial service to sit down.
Now here's the funny.
One more.
Yeah.
So at the next Yarmy's Army meeting, Chuck McCann announced it is in his will that if that guy shows up at his memorial service, he's having snipers on the roof to take him out before he can come inside the building.
Chuck McCann, may he rest in peace. What a wonderful, lovely. As kids, I appeared on his show back, but I was doing My Mother's Italian, and Chuck was at one of the Studio City, and I invited him to my show, but he was with friends. He was suffering from dementia or Alzheimer's at that point, about 4 years ago. Before I think he had dementia.
Beginning of that, yes.
Yeah, he was smiling and laughing, and you think he's just a happy-go-lucky guy. Very talented man. But
very, very.
I did 2 shows with Shirley Jones, and I was doing My Mother's Italian in Burbank. This woman comes up to me. She says, "What are you selling?" I'm selling my comedy CDs. Who's on it? Well, I have a lot of celebrities that introduced me on TV shows. Shirley Jones. She's my best friend. We gave birth to the same child. We gave birth to our children at the same time in the hospital. Why don't you bring it to the show? Give me your number. I'll call her. All right. So Shirley Jones comes to my show. We took a picture, and we took some pictures together. And and she's not doing very well, Shirley. And I knew her son. I opened for her son, Patrick. Right. Very tall, good-looking man.
Yes.
Good singer, musical theater. Straight, heterosexual, by the way. Musical theater, Patrick. And I said to her, it was so funny. I said, I put your photo, Shirley, of me and you on Facebook. I got 400 likes. I never get likes, only with you. And everyone thinks you're Florence Henderson. She goes, yes, I've been having that for years. But I won an Oscar. Florence Henderson did not, because they were contemporaries, by the way. You know that.
Yes. And competitors.
And competitors, really. Were they really?
Well, because they both were blondish, with help, soprano singers.
Okay.
They'd both done Broadway. They'd both done The Sound of Music. They'd both done South Pacific.
Oh, okay. Then they really were. But
yeah.
And here's the sad thing. I said, how's David? And in 2 months, she says, David is not long for this earth. And 2 months later, he passed. He was a drinker, and they did an intervention. And they tried. I said, well, I'll tell you, when Cassidy outlived Danny Bonaducci, it makes you wonder about, a higher calling. But
I have about 37 inappropriate jokes that I won't use right now. We're running a little short on time here.
Yeah.
Would you tell our friends and fans who are watching one more time where they can find you, the name of your show, and all that stuff?
Well, if you want to see where My Mother's Italian, My Father's Jewish is playing. Go to playhouseinfo.com. Playhouseinfo.com. Look at the drop-down box. You'll see where I'm doing that show. If you want to know where I'm performing, find me on Instagram, Peter Fogel Comedian, or go to Facebook, find me, and you'll know. Or go to my website, Till Death Do Us Part, Till Death Do Us Part, theplay.com. Till Death Do Us Part, theplay.com. Look for tour dates. You'll know where I'm performing. And if I come on and do your show again, I'll tell you some Marty Ingalls stories if you'd like to hear.
And you'll be in Arizona when? You have dates yet, or just the month?
I'll be in Arizona doing. My mother's Italian, my father's Jewish. The therapy continues. New Year's Eve week, which is December, towards to the end of January. So I'll be there I'll be there like close to five weeks. So
friends and fans, I will be coming to see him. And when I know that I'm coming, the exact date, I will post it on my media. And hey, come out and spend time with both of us and watch this brilliant man make you laugh, because he never fails to make me laugh. And why couldn't you be gay? We'd be perfect together.
You're much neater than I am. And now, if you excuse me, I have to go look at some 80s Wham videos of George Michael. That's my life.
Hey, you're just giving me the best crossover, because our next guest has just finished writing a book about George Michael.
Really? Very talented.
Seriously. Okay. Peter, thank you so much for being with me. You know I love you, and I think you're brilliant. And we will talk off camera later. I love you. Thank you for being here, and break a leg with all the wonderful things you're doing.
Well, in Florida, it's called break a hip. Thanks, Geoffrey.
Take care so much. All right. Did you laugh? If you didn't laugh, I think you're taking too many medications, because the man is funny. And so is my next guest, and talented and handsome. And James Gavin and I have been close friends for almost 30 years. We share a Grammy nomination together. He's written incredible books about the New York cabaret scene, about Peggy Lee, about Lena Horne. He's just put to bed a book about George Michael that will be being released, I believe, next year. He's my dear friend. He just spent several days here in Southern California with me, but he's back in New York on our show now. Would you please welcome my buddy, James Gavin?
Jeff, this is the first time in my life anyone has ever called me funny. And if you say it, it must be true.
You've been making me laugh for 3 decades.
Well, bless your heart, Jeff. I love seeing your face. You know that. I always do. And I've had the honor, as you said, of having seen it for almost 30 years now. That's a long time. We go back.
We go back to being little children together. No, but we were much younger men. We met, for those of you who would care to know how we met, in New York City. Verve Records, which is a jazz record label, had a Christmas party, and both Jim and I worked for them writing album notes. And there we were, and I was fascinated by you. I was fascinated by your stories, your knowledge, your incredible good looks, and your charm. And I wanted to get to know you better, and here we are all these years later.
Jeff, at that time, that would have been around 1992, 93 that we first. And my first book had come out in 1991, a book called Intimate Nights, The Golden Age of New York Cabaret. And that's the book that launched me on my so-called career, doing this very slippery slope life that I've been doing for all that time. And you, at that time, were also just getting off the runway as a writer. When was your first book published?
In 90, I want to say 95 or 96.
Okay, so we're very close.
You know that I've been in show business much previous to that as an actor and a singer and a comedian. But
absolutely.
I had gotten sober in 1989, and I did not want to go through the daily rejections that performers go to. Well, what can I do that doesn't have daily rejection? Well, if I write a book, I'll get rejected all at once at the end. I don't have to do it every single day. Well, I didn't get rejected. And there you and I were.
What a wonderful segue that was for you, because you wrote in its initial edition, and much more so still in the recent revised edition, a very human portrait of a rather unknowable lady, unknowable in the sense that Ella's personal life, her personal issues and dramas were kept far out of the view of the public. And that isn't the reason why people go to Ella Fitzgerald. They go to Ella because she is like champagne. She is a guaranteed spirit lifter. And yet you managed to find, and this impressed me so much, you found the humanity in Ella, and you really gave her a missing, in my opinion, missing third dimension.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I believe you've done the same things for the ladies you've written about. Your cabaret book, let's, for our friends and fans who may think cabaret, they're talking about a movie with Liza Minnelli, can you give a good definition of what you mean by New York cabaret?
I think I can. It is...
I know you can.
It's a minimalist entertainment experience in which the audience is really integral to the show and to the vibe in the air. Cabaret shows are usually done in rooms that are, I would say, 150 seats or less. Usually, always drink, but often food are a part of the experience. Every person in the audience is significant because the person on stage performing is very aware, you know this very well yourself from your performing career, they're aware of your presence. They can see faces, they can see eyes. There is a degree of human contact between performer and audience that you don't find at Carnegie Hall or at the Meadowlands or even in our smaller halls in Lincoln Center. It's an intimate bond between performer and listener. And in a city like New York, which is, for many people, it's always been a somewhat intimidatingly impersonal, cold, crowded experience in which you may be thrown together among a lot of people, but you can also feel very alone. The marvelous thing for me about cabaret is that you are with a group of people, sometimes on a good night, elbow to elbow, and you feel a marvelous sense of oneness with a group of strangers. And if the person on stage has that transcendent ability to speak to hearts and to make you feel things and reflect on your life and laugh about things that are troubling you, it's a very bonding, very unifying experience that I've been addicted to since my first cabaret show when I was about, I would say, 18 years old. I'll never forget it.
You know, Peter was joking with me, but he means it. I know everybody in show business. That's kind of part of my history or my charm. You have probably personally viewed or listened to or watched on video every singer of the last 100 years. Your breadth of knowledge of vocalists amazes me. For your cabaret book, I know you interviewed a lot of people who were very, very large in cabaret, and it's a brilliant book. Can you pick out one person from that book that you were either like, I can't believe I'm talking to this person, or, oh, I'm talking to this person, I wish they were nicer?
Oh,
okay. Or one of each, if you like.
Well, let me answer both of those questions. The cabaret performer that I got to know the best, probably, and who touched my life and countless other lives in a very deep and permanent way, was Julie Wilson.
Yes.
I met Julie Wilson. Yeah. I met her when I was 21 years old. I had already interviewed her marvelous accompanist and musical director, William Roy, for my cabaret book. And at that time, I was a college kid. I was going to Fordham University, and I had come out of nowhere in the sense that I had no resume, no agent, no book deal. I had nothing but desire and an infatuation with this subject and with the notion of becoming a sophisticated, worldly New Yorker. And so all of those feelings led me to this project, which had never been done. This was an pretty well unexplored area of show business in terms of books. And so I interviewed Billy, and Billy took me under his wing. And a lot of wonderful things happened to me as a result of my friendship with that marvelous man who had, in 1951, I believe, had played in the lounge of the Blue Angel, accompanying the singer Portia Nelson, and who had been the pianist and musical director for the smartest reviews in town, which were the Julius Monk reviews at the upstairs, at the downstairs. So when I was with Billy, I felt that I was basking in sophistication. He was playing for Julie Wilson full-time by then, and they were doing their Gershwin show, and Billy invited me to the Oak Room of the Algonquin Hotel on New Year's Eve of 1985. And I was in high cotton. And
yes, you were.
With very little experience in terms of being in such a posh crowd. So I was trying to wing it, and I was observing people around me and how they dressed and how they spoke and how they acted, trying to soak all of that up. And I beheld Julie Wilson on a stage for the first time, and like everyone else, I was captivated by her.
We could speak for 6 hours about Julie and about
Indeed.
that. I want to get to your other books, but I want to use Julie as an example, and I want people to hear what you have to say. There were cabaret performers, and there still are. We still exist. I still do it. Who they'll perform the works of George Gershwin or Harold Arlen. There are cabaret performers, which is what I used to do in the 70s, who mixed stand-up with singing. There are cabaret performers where their show tells a story. Julie, I think, of all the cabaret performers I've ever seen, captivated me the most. Her ability to tell a story with her song, to bridge the songs, not with comedy, but with charm, to be glamorous, and to play to the audience. I've told you this story before of there was a woman in Greenwich Village named Jan Waldman who had originated the Duplex, one of the first clubs I ever played in. And then she had her own place called Jan Waldman's, and there was a 1-year anniversary party, and she invited me to come sing, and I sang this here, but Falling in Love is Wonderful from Annie Get Your Gun at the top of my lungs. And she pulled me aside afterwards. She said, Jeff, you can't do that in a nightclub. You're not singing to the balcony. The people are right here in front of you. Pull back, let them come to you, and sing to them because they're actually there. A nightclub audience is not one great big faceless crowd of a theater. It's a whole bunch of individuals who are paying money to have a good time and get drunk. Entertain them. And I had to learn a whole new set of muscles. I thought Julie did it the best. Do you have a favorite?
Well, you raise a very good point, and that is that there were certain performers, Julie being one of them, Mabel Mercer, Felicia Sanders, and a variety of other people. My friend Steve Ross, whom I'm going to see tonight, whose careers have been centered in these little rooms and who truly bring out the grandeur of this experience. There were many other stars who passed through cabaret on their way to big, big things. And that's another approach. But someone like Julie, her life was in the saloons, and she had utmost mastery and respect for that experience and the directness of it, and the looking out upon a relatively small room full of people and the importance of that. This was no stepping stone for her. This was it. Of course, she did other things. She appeared on Broadway. She appeared in London's West End. She did a fair amount of television and so forth. She made records. But for Julie, this could be the night, and a handful of others as well. Julie truly respected and embodied that experience that I talked about earlier. She saw what was special about these little back room and basement places, or even more glamorous places like the Oak Room of the Algonquin, that were these little havens where sophisticated people gathered, or people like myself who wanted to be sophisticated and who felt sophisticated in her presence.
You, like myself, it's a shame Julie did not become the bigger star that she deserved to be. In case some of our fans and friends who are watching don't know who she is, let's move forward, because you've written 3 books about 3 amazing singers: Chet Baker, Peggy Lee, Lena Horne, who had much different lives than she did. The books have been brilliantly reviewed. You are the darling of people who write books such as these. Can we just touch on all 3 books? Because one would think, well, Lena Horne, Peggy Lee, glamorous, great singing black woman, glamorous, great singing white woman, but they're very, very different people, and they're very different books because they are very different people. Just for we can't go on and on, but can you go to each book and just give me a taste of what these people were like?
One of the things that I love about the Chet Baker story and Chet Baker's life is that he lived in his entire adult life flouting every accepted rule for civilized behavior. He didn't pay his taxes. He didn't have a home. He had a family that he didn't really attend to. He was on the road in his car, living the ultimate Jack Kerouac on the road life. He took drugs. He was unashamed about taking drugs. He died at the age of 58, mysteriously, in Holland, although I believe I've pretty much solved that mystery in my book. Chet Baker's influence goes on, and I have heard no end of male singers who imitate Chet Baker in one way or the other. He had a magical mystery and charisma about him that cannot be imitated. The sound can be imitated, but as with many of the greats, Lena and Peggy among them, and a lot of other singers have tried to imitate Lena and Peggy, but Lena said it best. She's talking about those other girls who were basically doing Lena. She said, "They don't know what I'm thinking."
It's so true. It's so true. You cannot copy magic. You can copy a sound, you can copy a look, but you can't copy magic. And I think both you and I write about magical performers.
Well, Jeff,
Would you say that's a good-
absolutely. It's a challenge to capture that stuff in words. The thing that united Lena, Chet, and Peggy was their mystery, because you watched them and you really didn't know what they were thinking. You felt something very deeply coming out of there, but it came out of a hazy, mysterious place. There were so many layers of contradictory feeling that you saw. There were so many question marks swirling around these singers. Anyone who has seen Peggy on the Judy Garland show singing "When the World Was Young" knows what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Lena Horne was a sorceress of feelings, while in the 50s and 40s she was this glamorous ice goddess. That's how she depicted herself, glamorous and untouchable. There were so many layers of feeling and enigma. Just you could peel them away forever and not get to the bottom of them. And Peggy, of course, was, to use the word goddess again, she really was a goddess of that kind of mystique. And that fascination keeps drawing people in. But Peggy's allure has not dimmed in all these years. Young people know her for, I would say, 3 things. The songs Fever, younger people, special ones, mind you. But Fever, Is That All There Is, and the songs from Lady and the Tramp, which she co-wrote, do have a life. They go on and on and on. And Lena's story is one of the great epic stories of American history of the 20th century, in my opinion. As is Chet Baker's, in a way, as the ultimate depiction of the jazz life at its rockiest. So these performers have profoundly complicated and dramatic lives, and they translated that into beautiful and moving music. And if any performer who can do that, I'm in.
You and I share, besides friendship, something else. We share a Grammy Award nomination together.
Thanks to you, Geoffrey.
Well, let me very quickly tell that story. You've heard me tell it probably too many times at this point, but I got a phone call one day from a man named Orrin Keepnews, who was a big-time jazz producer, and he said, Ella Fitzgerald had a lawsuit with Decca Records because they kept releasing her songs on LPs without paying her. So there were no CDs of her music from the first 20 years. Well, they settled the lawsuit, he said. I called 10 people in jazz and asked them who should choose the song and write the album notes for this. And they all gave me your phone number, which is one of the biggest compliments I've ever gotten. They wanted like an 80-page booklet. And I said, I just wrote a book. Another 80 pages is a lot. I can choose the songs and sequence them. He said, well, how about a second writer to help you out? I said, great. And he mentioned 4 or 5 names I will not mention because I don't like any of them. And I said, well, personally or professionally for that matter. And I said, there was a young writer I'm so fond of as a writer and so fond of personally. Could I please have James Gavin? He said, that's what you want. You got it. And we each wrote half of it, and we got nominated. I already know the answer to the question, but for our friends out there, what does it feel like to get nominated for something like that? And if you want to throw in, and you were honored at Lincoln Center for your work, good heavens, you are an honored artist. How does that feel to you?
I never take it for granted, because to do what I do and to do what you do, mind you, this is the road I chose, and it has not been an easy one, but it's been a fabulous one. I am doing what I set out to do. And you take all the kicks in the stomach that come as the fair trade-off for the blessing of being able to wake up in the morning and do projects that you deeply care about and that give your life meaning. And as for the aforementioned kicks in the stomach, they really do keep you humble. And so I do not take for granted what I get to do. And so when one of those nods comes along, I look at it in disbelief, because all I'm thinking about, I compare it to, this sounds cornball, forgive me, but if you're climbing up a mountain, which we do all the time and always will, then you can't look down, you can't look up, you can only look at the step directly ahead of you and just keep on moving. And so I don't reflect, I never pat myself on the back for anything that I've done, but on those occasions when somebody else has been kind enough to do that, it makes all of the hard knocks seem even more worth it than they ordinarily were. So thank you for asking that question. I've gotten a few of those nods. You've gotten more than a few of those nods. And it's just a wonderful affirmation of what we know in our hearts, that we're doing the right thing.
You are, and you go forward. Your latest book, which is not yet published, goes in a kind of a different direction musically. Your expertise is in the Great American Songbook and the people who sang those songs, but you've written what I'm imagining is going to be a blockbuster of a book about a pop singer, George Michael. How different was that for you than the things you've done before?
it was a rough one, Jeff. Different reasons than the other people I've examined in books, but a great singer, universally respected by other great singers in every genre of music. But 80s British pop was not my field of expertise. I had to learn a lot of George Michael's world from scratch, whereas I knew Peggy's world and Lena's world like the back of my hand. I'd grown up with it and been in love with it since I was a small child, literally. In the case of George, I had to prove to the people who I hoped would someday read my book that I knew my stuff. And it was a lot harder for me to master, I hope I've done that, the musical world that he came up in, which was very different from that of Peggy or Lena. And so, and to try to sound authoritative about it. But aside from that, yeah, go ahead.
No, just ask, was his private life as mysterious as the other people's?
His private life was the opposite of mysterious. It was laid out in sometimes shocking in the British tabloids. The British tabloids are a monster completely of themselves. And I write a lot about the British tabloids in my book because they were pivotal to his career and to the careers of anybody else who was a celebrity star, pop star back in the 80s, 90s, and onward. George Michael was startlingly revealing about his personal life, and the British tabloids were on his heels from 1983, when he first became famous, until this day. And he died, as you know, on Christmas Day of 2016. So the tabloids in my book are almost a character in the book because they are so pivotal to what happened to George Michael. They are an absolutely fascinating part of British culture.
You toured, I'm changing the subject because we have a few minutes yet. You toured for a while in a live show about Lena's life, where you were the narrator who kind of held it all together. Now, I don't really know you as an actor or as a performer, perhaps. What was that like for you? And tell our friends who you were touring with, because you were with a big star.
I created a show in order to promote my Lena Horne book. I created a show based on my book whose premise was simple. I narrated the story of Lena's life based on my book. There was a jazz trio, and to sing the songs of Lena Horne, Mary Wilson, whom I met at Toucan's Tiki Lounge in your nearby hometown of Palm Springs back in 2010. I believe it was 2010. And Mary agreed to be the singer of those songs. It was something unlike she had ever done before in her life, singing the Great American Songbook and working with real jazz musicians. And we did our first show together in 2011 and our last show together in 2017. And Mary Wilson changed my life by agreeing to do this. She was highly intimidated by this project at the beginning and for some time to come. And I am proud of the fact that I could show a lot of people that Mary, rest her soul, had a beautiful voice, a beautiful velvety sound, and a real solo personality that had never shown through in the Supremes. And I would say this show maybe brought it out even more than her solo shows of the kinds of music she was known for singing had managed to do. And
how did you feel being the guy in the spotlight?
Because I didn't have to memorize lines, I was at a podium and I had pages in front of me. And therefore, it was a breeze. I love public speaking. I've done a fair amount of lecturing. And I got to just stroll out on stage and read copy that I had prepared and tell stories to groups of people, which is one of my favorite things to do in life. And I got to experience life on the other side of the footlights. And once you've done that, you can never watch a show in the same way again.
Isn't it amazing?
Yeah, it's supposed to look effortless and easy and natural up there when you're in the audience. And then when you step over onto the other side, you realize, obvious statement, but true, the tremendous amount of work that it takes to create that illusion. And so I got to be on a stage with a Supreme for, I would say, about 45 times, including twice in Australia, once in Barbados, all over the United States at performing arts centers. And it was a golden time of my life, and I will be grateful to the end of my days for that woman, for the gift that she gave me. And I believe that the show touched people, and they got to know Lena Horne and Mary Wilson in a way that they never had before.
And bravo and brava to you and to her. I felt silly, folks, because the day she passed, I got a phone call. Because as sometimes happens in the business, you hear things before it's released. Well, I assumed because of their connection that Jim had already heard it. So I contacted him. Yeah, I'm really sorry about Mary. He said, what do you mean? And I had to be the one to tell him that she passed away. And I was like, ooh, I could have done this 900 times better. I always felt badly about that, just dumping that piece of information in your lap.
Oh, Jeff, I was glad that it came from you, truly. Mary was only 76 when she died. She had a lot more to give. People that you and I know who have expired at, shall we say, a more appropriate time in their lives when their contribution is complete. I don't shed too many tears over those people because there's got to be an end somewhere. And I don't go on Facebook and say I'm falling apart at the news that so-and-so has died at the age of 97. Yes, we'll miss their presence on this earthly plane. But in the case of Mary Wilson, Mary was still going strong, and she was full of life and full of plans. And that is sad. But I continue to be immensely grateful that by the sheer happenstance of my having been in Toucans to see our friend Kay Ballard doing a live interview with a resident drag queen whose name I've forgotten about the audio version of her memoir. What is the name of it? How I Lost 10 Pounds in 50 Years or something like that. And I was there to see Kay, and I was there with dear Bulldog Bill Feingold, who knew Mary, and he introduced me to Mary, and look what came of it, and what are the chances of that?
Jim, we only have about a minute left. Remind folks, what is the publication date of your book, and what is the book called of George Michael?
The book has the simple, dignified title, George Michael, A Life. The publication date, I don't have the exact date, but it's either in May or June of 2022. I forget which. But it will come out around the time of his birthday. It's not a special birthday. He would have been 59 at that time. But it doesn't matter. You know, the same people who want it will buy it, whatever the tie-in is.
Everybody asks you what's next. Are you even thinking about what's next? Or are you still concentrating on George and what's right in front of you?
The latter. I'm frankly exhausted from the process of doing that book. And so I'm doing articles. I have a fascinating feature on an album called Love is a Drag that was released in 1960, very obscurely. And it will be in the December issue of Jazz Times. And it's the story of one of the most fascinating albums in jazz, and mysterious. So that's coming up. And no, I don't have another book nailed down yet. I need a little bit of time to let my brain heal from this one.
You're just going to walk the streets of New York, fascinating people with your good looks. Gary Allen says, great job, gentlemen. Thank you so much. I'll say thank you to Gary. And Gary, please feel better. But I agree with him. Thanks both to you and to Peter for a great hour of television. I loved this, and I love you very, very, very much. Thank you for being with me.
And I love you back, Jeff. And thank you. You are a splendid host. And now I've experienced it firsthand, and I will tell the world.
Please, please do. Please do. Please do. I have not yet nailed down my guest for next week. At the end of the month, we'll be having legendary adult film star Amber Lynn with us. I'm not sure who's coming next week, but I know whoever it is, it'll be somebody that you're going to really enjoy. So on behalf of Gary Allen, I'm Geoffrey Mark. This was James Gavin, and we had Peter a little bit earlier. God bless, and have a happy.